Hello and welcome to this special guest episode, I guess, on Cruz's channel. It's the final between Cruz and Kenshi for Sobble Discord Cup 5. I'm ukrocky or Craig. I tend to float around on the Discord playing Dinos or Deepwood. So this is the final between the two, both coming in with a 3-0 record for a 4-0 tournament win in Discord Cup 5. Cruz with the Darkborn. Darkborn's making a wonderful comeback at the moment, both in ranked and in tournaments. But we've got the Arcane Web, Hex of Ruin, probably the two best spells in the game at the moment, alongside the crossbows, the amazing battle line unit that's quite expensive, but for an elite battle line unit, they're amazing, the Dreadguard. The Hydra, a lot of people debating Hydra versus Harpies, and then the speed from the Chariot, and also the Riders that, again, are doing really, really well on ranked at the moment, and seem to be a core focus in a lot of Darkborn lists at the moment. Darkborn doing well. And then the current top army, in my opinion, especially with Kenshi pushing them, is the Goatmen. You've got the 4 Chariots. You got all the ambushing mongrel packs alongside the Raider Goatman Warrior unit, and then the Minotaurs lugging along behind in the background. On the face of it, in a pitch battle, I would give the advantage to the Darkborns, but in this tournament, it was scoring objectives only. And I think pushing the Goats off the objective is going to be a real challenge. Both lists incredibly solid. Both lists have already picked up 3 wins in this tournament. And both races doing really well in rank generally at the moment, and doing really well in 2 people that know what they're doing. I do find when I'm playing against Goats, I do tend to want to go second. So Cruz having to go first here, probably not ideal, but it might not matter too much. I find if the Goats get to go second, a Chariot can usually get into a bit of an annoying position. So the Mongrels pushing up in the middle, that's just to protect the objective and make sure Cruz can't contest the objective on turn 1. Starting to lock down those objective-based points, and that's a big thing around what the Goats do. They tend to trade pretty well in terms of unit points, but then they're obviously able to contest or win the objective, usually with relative ease. Something that I'm finding difficult when I'm playing against Goats at the moment. Just looking at the general setups, Kenshi's obviously had to spread out, which isn't an issue at all for the Goats. Probably round the objective a little bit. I was slightly surprised that Cruz went for the wood, but I guess so was Kenshi, looking at his weighted deployment of his infantry, but it's much of a muchness, I think. And the Goats can just deploy really wide. The Chariots can obviously get there pretty quick. It means that those Goatmen Warriors might be out of the game for a little bit on the left. But when you're playing against Goats, you do probably have to bubble up on one side or the other and then start to push out for the objective later on, which is what Cruz has had a go at here. I guess general game plan is just to whittle down those Chariots early doors. Things like Hydras trade pretty well for Chariots. So I guess choices here. I've not watched this game before for what it's worth, but I've got Hex on the Chariot, try and remove a Chariot. Or we've got Arcane Web on the Minotaurs. Let's see which one we go for. Okay, so Hex on that Chariot. Remove one of the 2 Chariots. You're then looking at the Darkborn Chariots versus the Goat Chariots, or you've got the Hydra versus Goat Chariots, both pretty good for the Elves in that instance. So I guess even just a one-on-one fight, they're okay for the Darkborn. It's just if you can get 2 units in, that's really where Goats shine. So for example, looking at where the Hydra is now, I appreciate it's not moved, but Mongrels in the front, Chariot in the flank, obviously not great, and similar across the board. So trying to keep those one-on-one fights is sort of the main focus for the Darkborns, trying to remove some of these fast threats, just whittle down these Chariots. But even now that Chariot's on 3 wounds left. I've never actually zoomed in on Sobble. This is fascinating that people zoom in. It's something I've never done. But chipping away on those fast threats and making sure that you haven't got those Chariots into the late game is really key. Setting up, dealing with the blocks in turns 4, 5, 6, and 7, contesting the objective. That should really be the aim, I guess. And for the Goatmen, it's what can the Chariots do? And if one of the Chariots, and it only takes one of them, can get lucky in the flank of something, or it can get into the right spot, or it can, maybe break the Darkborn Chariot, or break the Riders, which can easily happen, then, the game can turn quite quickly. I do think Kenshi will need to use those Minotaurs and get them right up, but also make sure they're not being flanked in the late game, which again, the goats, once they lose those chariots, can be a bit of a rough ride. A lot of shuffling around, making sure that, I said earlier with that Hydra, making sure it's not getting double charged. I do think it shouldn't go in here. I think Hydras fall if they're fighting in too many fronts, similar to a lot of the big monsters. So just using it as a threat, using it to block up a flank is probably the best idea. I said if it fights a chariot one-on-one, it'll probably grind the chariot out. But yeah, using that range shooting to try and whittle down the chariots. You'll notice Kenshi's using the chariots later in the turn. That's just to try and get into those flanks. A choice between shooting the chariots or the Minotaur there, and it had been a dead Minotaur, but instead that one chariot has taken a real hit. I think if that chariot only takes, say, 1 wound, it can maybe go into the Darkborn riders and try and get lucky and trade for them potentially. As it is, it wouldn't surprise me to see these chariots go into the crossbows to try and reduce that shooting. But these chariots have taken a battering early doors here. That's in both them. So one thing that me and Cruz have been chatting about is how can you deal with the prominence of goats at the moment. And dealing with those chariots early doors is really important. Can your list kill a chariot reliably at 500 or maybe even 2 at 750 or 1000? And that's a really big part of dealing with the goats at the moment. One thing you see is goat players doing this a lot, which is using their chariots as chaff, so not actually wanting to do any damage with them. Quite a lot recently when I've played goats, I see chariots moved first right into the face of a unit so that it basically pins my unit in place for a turn, which means they can set up a flank with a different chariot. So if we take an example of that, if that middle chariot pushed onto the Darkborn riders right into the middle of them, an inch away, then that chariot on the left could maybe get a flank later in the turn. So, alright, turn 2. Good turn 1, I'd say, for the Darkborn. Obviously that objective is pretty locked down. Chariot v Chariot is, as an elf player, admittedly Deepwood, so not the exact same. I would take Chariot v Chariot. We got the wounded chariot into the priestess's unit. That's just to try and stop the shooting for a turn, whittle something down. I said I can see reasons for going into a lot of these units. I think the crossbows make sense for the long run. Thinking about turns 4, 5, 6 when the shooting might make a difference. The Darkborn riders might have been nice to tie down as well. And that's pretty much it. So the Hydra didn't go in, which I think is a good move. Because I think if it does, it probably sticks to that turn, but then maybe dies the next turn. Although it would have plocked the Minotaurs up. So, yeah. Right choice though. And one thing that's, as I mentioned, going first against goats is generally bad. So trying to trade the charges so that you can get that second activation is quite important. It's really hard to do with how many fast units they have. It's rare that you can declare more charges. So shooting those crossbows early into the Minotaurs, setting up a flank into this raining chariot. The amount of times I've seen a elf chariot go into a goat chariot and fluff, I don't think this is a bad move at all. The flee path is interesting. I don't think either chariot will go off the board, so it's just about whether it dies, I guess. My guess after these mongrels move is maybe going to be an arcane web on either the chariot, but probably the Minotaurs. I guess the Minotaurs. Oh, unless I've already missed that, because it looks like they've already activated. Maybe that's already happened. Sorry if that's already happened, but that's what I would guess would have happened. Might just be my video playback that's not working there, but yeah, Arcane Web is such a great spell at the moment. I think people have been sleeping on it for a long time. It's really coming to the fore. And Cruz is quite happy not to engage in combat at this point, trying to use that range game, those spells, early doors to whittle down the goats, get the numbers advantage so that you can start to get the flanks that you want. Yeah, Cruz will also have the speed advantage once those chariots are dead with both the Hydra and these crossbow riders. So the crossbow riders are really good at the moment, a really good versatile unit. They can shoot, they can fight, they're fast. They're pretty tanky. 10 wounds at defense 4 is nothing to sniff at, especially when you can make sure you're out of range of stuff. But yeah, a good light cavalry unit. It does look like I missed the arcane web on the Minotaurs, but we'll pretend that I came up with that move myself so that it makes me look good. But yeah, I think that's the right move. So here, offering the chariot into the Hydra, and nothing else, which means you trade the chariot for the Hydra in the long run, but that'll be on turn 3, potentially 4. Or I quite like this move here from Kenshi, just going straight for those riders. I think pinning down those riders is quite important. And if we think about the turn after, we've got the Mongols and the Goatmen warriors versus 3 units. So Goat Chariot dies, and no wounds on the Darkborn Chariot. That's one of the issues of the Goat Chariots, is they can do 0, or they could have done 5 wounds there. Super variable. Let's see what this one does. Bang on the money, save 1. Yeah, I don't think Kenshi had much choice with that chariot there. I said I think maybe the riders could have been an option, but yeah. Have we got a flank into the halberds, or are the riders just going to go in? Riders go in. I think that's a good move. I said they're a super flexible unit. And the chariot didn't charge back, and the Minotaurs have turned. Arcane Web comes out again. So if you've not played with or against Arcane Web, it is a really good spell. Like, really, really good. And at this point, the right flank is very much Cruz's, and it's just whether he can get around and what he can do to those Minotaurs. Those Minotaurs can't just take another 4 turns of shooting. So Kenshi's gonna have to be aggressive with those mongrels. The mongrels are actually a really good point-for-point unit in combat. This Hydra's going to be able to get into the flank of those Goatmen by the looks of it. And then, yeah, it's just what can those mongrels do? But we're looking at 2 units of mongrels, and I guess Minotaurs, against 3 units of infantry who can shoot with 1 Hex of Ruin left and a chariot. It's going to be a slog here for the Goats to really get in, but those objective points racking up. But even if you let them have it for 5 turns at 750 points, it's a third of the game value. But 500, that's half the game value. It's really hard to win by 250 on unit points, whereas 750 it's a little bit more possible. Using those halberds to protect the shooting from those mongrels that might come forward. Here we go, what can this chariot do? Outrange the Minotaurs, but in range to intercept that depleted mongrel unit. And continuing to deplete that mongrel unit. Ignoring the Minotaurs effectively at this point. Trying to make sure that we've got enough combat to deal with that unit of mongrels. The second unit of mongrels just turns around to go after those riders. I think that's a good move. I think locking down the riders is good. And obviously those halberds have already moved. And yeah, Hydra into the flank of the Goats. Not a surprise there, really. Darkborn riders do a couple. I don't really understand why that chariot didn't charge back. I think if that chariot charges back, it potentially breaks the Goats. But yeah, I guess at least with the chariot here, it's got a chance to rally. It's still in the game. Or is it just 7, 6, 7? Yeah, 7. So we're going to see an intercept here, which is why the chariot moved up so aggressively. Mongrels into the flank, Hydra into the flank. All the usual expected stuff. Can those halberds get in the flank of the mongrels? Maybe not. Yeah, so I guess the charges you expect. Can they get in the flank? It's the joys of watching a replay is I really want to draw my own lines and arcs, but cool. So my expectation on this turn would be the Hydras start grinding on those goats. The mongrels should break the Dark Riders. The chariot should break the mongrels. It's about protecting the Minotaurs from enough flanks. But we've still got Hex of Ruin. We've still got a lot of crossbows on the board. That top unit of crossbows might not be able to shoot though. So, yeah. Tricky one for the goats here, I think. They need some luck in, preferably with those mongrels, is what I would suggest. That's like the one where I'm like, they could get lucky. The Minotaur is moving away towards the Hydra. My worry though is the chariot. That chariot's going to have sight to the rear of the Minotaurs. So a lot of faith here that those mongrels hold. But I think this is one thing that a lot of people don't do when playing Sovel, is move units away. I see a lot of people still keeping their foot on the gas when, when you're playing this points value game. You might not need to. A good war cry there, it gives those mongrels a bit of a better chance against the chariot. The mongrels should then break the Dark Riders for sure. Maybe gives the Lord and the Goats a chance to get some combat res against the Hydra. Does the chariot rally? It does. Useful little rally that. It's not in a great spot, but it'll come back and do something. Okay, 2 hits, 1 wound. That is good for the Goats. Good. So it was all about those mongrels holding. They did. The high variance of chariots means they're really annoying to play with and against. So 7 wins on the Riders will see them go off the board now. But we've maybe got halberds into the flank there. Can they hold against this Hydra? Cruelty only getting 1 through. It's unfortunate. Oh, good from the Hydra. Save 1. 3's not bad. Oh, it's bad for the Goats, that. But a hold on 7. I still don't think that's great for the Goats, if I'm honest. I think the Hydra's just going to sit there now and grind through that Goatman unit. Chariot could go in the rear, I guess. But without those Minotaurs pushing now, it's easy pickings for the Darkborn at this point. There's nothing to... I guess the Minos could go for the flank of those halberds in a minute. But the crossbows are safe. Still got Hex of Ruin for when we need it. The Darkborns are going to be on the objective next turn, you'd imagine, with the chariot. So we're going to start to see that objective twist and turn in that middle section. Mongols rally, sure. Interested to see if the chariots goes to the rear of the Hydra here, but peeks out the side, and then we've got Minotaurs going for the flank of those halberds, which is a good move. Let's see what the shooting does. The Darkborn with these 2 spells, the amount of shooting they can put out, the speed, some of the really good combat they can get out. Even the crossbows are pretty good in combat, just due to that skill 4. A Hex of Ruin, interesting. Ooh, it worked though. Oh, that really worked. I like it. It's not always well going, but I like the move. It's a good move. Mongrels are going to lose this combat, probably break as a result. Good rolling from the crossbows. Well, actually, the hit roll was pretty poor, so. But so we've got the objective going to turn here. The chariot, I imagine, will go for the objective. And then it's whether the beast chariot goes for the objective as well, or whether it continues to try and get some unit points from somewhere. Oh, regen. It's well annoying. Do you think regen should be limited by number? I think like Hydra should have regen 2, so I guess 2 wounds every turn, rather than just flat regen being all of your wounds. I think it would make regen in the single player campaign a little bit more interesting as well. Sorry, I'm just using this as an opportunity to spout my opinion rather than anything else. Alright, we're going all out for the Hydra here, potentially. I think I would use the chariot to contest the objective. Oh, actually, it just gets shot, doesn't it? So, yeah, maybe not. Go into the Hydra. That's what I'd go for. Minotaurs are having to go for a little bit of a Hail Mary here. Even though Kenshi's 250 points up on objective and probably slightly up on unit points. I think if those Minotaurs go down, the Hydra goes down. I mean, I know the result of the game, but this game is very much in the balance at this point. Yeah. So we go. There's the objective play from the chariot. You've got enough from the crossbows to tie up the rear of those mongrels if you don't shoot them off. You should shoot them off, but there's enough there. I imagine the other unit of crossbows will go to the flank of those Minotaurs. Just to try and finish those Minotaurs off. I think now there's only 2, which is why I think the Hex of Ruin was good. Now there's only 2. You've got, between the halberds and the crossbows, you'll be able to kill them off in combat. They're not going to grind through those halberds too quickly. With Fearless, which means they're not going to break. So, I think those Minotaurs are going to die. And I don't think the halberds are going to die. Might get half points for the halberds, but that's about it. So, options is the move there. So, you've got a choice of going flank of mongrels or flank of Minotaurs, depending on how this shot goes, I guess, and depending on how the combat with the halberds goes. And a lot of movement in Sovel is about giving yourself options, which is what the second halberd unit's done. It looks like it's in range of the flank of the Minotaurs. So we've got choices here. We can go for whatever we want to go for. Should be dead on the mongrels though. Nice. We can now choose which unit to go into Minotaurs with because of how that was set up. Alright, does the Hydra go down? Cruelty does 2. I would suggest it's probably going to go down. It's going to get half points for the Goatmen Warriors. So it's got some points back, which is good at least. That's 1 wound from those 10 attacks is good. Bad to hit roll, but fair one on the save anyway. Mongrels. What do Mongrels want to do? They want to maybe kill a Hydra. They do kill a Hydra. Nice. And you just killed it. 6 wounds. I said, I think these Minotaurs are going to die. They might get half points for their halberds. They do get half points for their halberds. Oh, I didn't realise one was only left on the wounds. Yeah, those Minotaurs are dead. Alright, final turn. So those 3 units on the left have effectively nothing to do. Great move from the chariot, touching the wood. This is when sort of knowing how far ahead or behind in the game you are is really important. As Cruz knows he's more or less ahead, including the Minotaurs. Then is the chariot enough points? If not, you can maybe Hail Mary into the Goatman Lord or the Mongrels. I think having a sort of vague idea of how the game's going is really important there. He went for the cheapest option out of the 3. Which that's only worth doing if you know how far ahead you are in the game. So can the crossbows get any points? We could get the Goatmen Warriors here, I guess. We've got 3. Should die. I'm not far off getting the Lord. So I guess, again, knowing that you've got those crossbows to come out meant that shooting the Goatmen was the easier option there. Yeah, and at this point we've got the Mongrels and the Chariot left. The Chariot's going to die as well though, so we've just got the Mongrels and the Lord left versus quite a lot of Darkborn. It's going to be 100 points to 250 on objectives, so only plus 150. But yeah, this Mino is going to go down. Even if it just breaks on the last turn, that counts, so... Okay, cool. So that's pretty much going to be it. The points will come up in a moment. My prediction... Well, I know who won, but I won't spoil it until the final screen. But a really close game all the way through. I think it was really interesting seeing how it twists and turns. I think the Darkborn got on top earlier, just with how much they managed to damage the Chariot, and that's really key in that matchup. Ooh, that was a bad Chariot roll in the flank. Oh, Well, that's an unexpected end. I did not see that Darkborn chariot dying at the end. But Cruz comes through with the victory. There's an extra 50 points here for the objective, really. So it's 6-1-5 to 5-4-5 is the final score, which gives Cruz the victory in Solid Discord Cup 5. It means he is the champion. I think Cruz and Kenshi are also 1 and 2 on the tournament rankings for the year, which can be found on the Discord. I think, as I said at the start of the game, I think the Darkborn do have the advantage. I think if you're playing Goats, not panicking over the objective and just sort of playing your game the first couple of turns and trying to later on maybe contest that objective is really, really key. I think, yeah, it was an interesting game throughout. There was, in terms of dice, I wouldn't say anything massively spiked or unspiked, apart from that chariot at the end, but as we can see from the result, it didn't matter. It would have been heartbreaking if that did matter, especially because I guess there was scope that Cruz didn't need to go in with that chariot, but a win by 70 points, got the Goatmen at the end, the other half of the Goatmen, which was, 54, so yeah, I guess knowing where you are in the game, that last turn sort of shows how important it is in terms of, did he need to go for either of those things to risk the chariot? I mean, felt like a fairly risk-free charge, to be honest, but that's just how dice work, I guess. And I think in terms of the Darkborn list, it was a good demo of sort of the power they can put out in a crossbow hex list, which is one archetype. You've also got the witches that are doing the rounds, but the Dreadguard holding there to a flank charge from the Minotaur shows why having that fearless battle line unit might be a good option as opposed to the witches, who are, yeah, they're a glass cannon, they can put out a lot of damage, but they don't have that leadership advantage. The crossbows, as you can see from that, 18 and 19 kills for the loss of 2 models, just shows how good they can be. The Hydra tying things up at the end there, but again, getting into the flank of something and not breaking it shows that it's a bit more of a pinning piece rather than a killing piece. And the Riders didn't have their best game, I'd say, but that happens against Goats because there's so many fast units and they can get tied down quite easily. But the Darkborn, really cool race. It's taken a little bit of time to sort of find its feet. There's a few lists doing the rounds at the moment. Orphan Maker on ranked at 500 is tearing up with 2 units of Riders, including a Priestess with Hex, some Witches, some Harpies, and a Chariot off the top of my head. And that's doing really, really well at the moment. And then in terms of Kenshi with the Goats, I think people were surprised he didn't bring Goat Gunline. So the Mongol Skirmishers with Hex of Ruin and a Feral Giant with the Throw Boulder. And then at 750 you can add in some Chariots or whatever it looks like. But the full ambush list, it is doing the rounds at the minute. It's a really, really good list in ranked, but also in tournament. And I think just not panicking against it, trying to whittle it down. And sure, like, if the Chariots get lucky, they can spike, they can break a flank, and we've all seen it a number of times. But a really good game. I couldn't see any clear and obvious errors as I was watching through. I was trying to pick up anything that I definitely would or wouldn't have done. I'm intrigued by that Chariot not charging the Darkborn Riders to the bottom, but I guess the positioning was maybe favourable in terms of the Goats the next turn over. So, yeah, a fascinating game. I think a really close game. I mean, as you can see from the victory points, and I'd be intrigued to see if they rematched again on a 2-objective map, how that would change the game. Obviously, Kenshi would have both of those early doors, and it's then what would Cruz's plan be to try and get one of those objectives back. I think that would change the game. That little wood in the middle giving a little bit of cover for the Minotaurs maybe distracted the Minotaurs potentially in the middle of the game, but also gave them cover. So again, pros and cons to that. So yeah, I think different maps, different objectives in the same matchup would be fascinating to watch, and I think both players earned their place to be in that final of the tournament. They both came up with really good 750 point lists. Both very, very good at their factions in the game and what they do. So, yeah, the next tournament is 500. We're back to 500, but with 2 lists this time. So, looking forward to seeing what people come up with for that. Thank you for watching. Sorry that I've basically just rambled away for a long time and just done a little bit of a commentary over the top. But hopefully you enjoyed watching as much as I did and hearing my live reactions to some shocks and twists and turns. And yeah, do get involved in the Solid Discord. Do get involved in the Solid Discord Cups, which are obviously on the Discord. And hopefully see some of you on ranked at some point. Catch you soon. Bye.